The storm hammered against the hospital windows as if the night itself wanted to break in, and inside room 407, a woman who was known across the city as the most ruthless, most untouchable CEO sat trembling on a hospital bed, clutching the thin blanket to her chest. Her name, one whispered with fear in boardrooms, had commanded entire industries, but tonight she was just a terrified human being staring at the men who had rushed into the room, a man who didn't look like a doctor or a surgeon but moved with the calm confidence of someone who had saved lives before. His t-shirt, soaked from the rain, clung to his muscular frame, and a tattoo on his arm quietly declared what he was: medic. His name was Daniel, single father, ex-combat medic, part-time EMT, full-time struggler who worked every shift possible to buy his little daughter's asthma medication. He wasn't supposed to be here tonight, he wasn't even on duty. But when the ER called him screaming that a VIP patient had collapsed and no surgeon had arrived yet, Daniel dropped everything, sprinted through the storm, and crashed into the room like a soldier returning to the battlefield he thought he had left behind. The CEO, Evelyn Hart, the woman who had negotiated with billionaires and crushed competitors without blinking, stared at him with tears welling in her eyes. "Please, just make it fast," she whispered, her voice shaking, her fingers trembling like a child's. I can't take the pain anymore." Daniel froze, not because he was afraid of the procedure, but because he recognized the look in her eyes. He'd seen it in soldiers bleeding out, in civilians trapped under rubble, in his wife the night she died giving birth to their daughter. It was the look of someone who felt alone, someone who thought their suffering didn't matter. For a heartbeat, Daniel felt his own past clawing at him, but then he stepped forward, straightening his back like a warrior returning to duty. "I'm here now," he said softly, taking off his soaked jacket and draping it gently around her shoulders, surprising her with the warmth and gentleness of his touch. "And as long as I'm here, nothing is going to happen to you. Look at me. You're safe." Evelyn swallowed hard, but her breathing eased as his voice wrapped around her like protection she never knew she needed. She wasn't used to kindness, she was used to people obeying her, fearing her, needing something from her. But Daniel didn't flinch, didn't tremble, didn't lower his eyes like the world did around her. He treated her like a person. "You shouldn't be this calm," she whispered, watching his hands prepare the emergency equipment the nurse had abandoned in panic. "You're not even the assigned doctor." "No," he murmured, "but I've saved enough people to know panic doesn't help anyone." He noticed she was gripping the blanket tight, not from pain, but from fear, genuine, suffocating fear. Something deeper than her medical emergency was tearing her apart. "Evelyn, what happened before they brought you in?" She shook her head, as if refusing the memory. "My board, they want to remove me. Someone sabotaged the elevator. I knew it would fall. I couldn't move. I just kept thinking. Maybe it's better if it ends." Her voice broke, and Daniel felt a sharp ache in his chest, not for the CEO, but for the woman who had been forced to be stronger than her heart could bear. "Listen to me," he said, lifting her chin gently so she would see the truth in his eyes. "You survived because you weren't meant to die tonight. You fought your way out of that elevator. That means you're stronger than what they did to you." She blinked rapidly, as if no one had spoken to her like that in years. He checked her vitals again, her heart rate was high, her skin cold. She was heading toward shock. "We need to stabilize you," he murmured, grabbing supplies. "This might hurt, but I promise I won't let it break you." "Just make it fast," she whispered again. But Daniel shook his head. "No," he said firmly. "I'm going to make it right." As he worked, steady hands, calm breath, controlled movements, Evelyn watched him with a strange mixture of fascination and relief. Every touch was confident but gentle, every instruction soft but firm. For the first time in years, she wasn't calculating, wasn't dominating, wasn't alone with her fears. She was simply human. When the worst wave of pain struck her, she gasped and reached out blindly. Without hesitation, Daniel caught her hand. His thumb brushed the back of her trembling fingers, grounding her like a lifeline. "I've got you," he murmured. "Stay with me." Her eyes locked on his, and something inside her broke, not in weakness, but in release. Someone was finally strong for her. Minutes stretched like hours until finally the machine stabilized, the worst of the crisis passing. Evelyn sagged back against the pillows, breathing shakily as Daniel adjusted the four. "You saved me," she whispered. He gave a small smile. "Saving people is the easy part. It's living after that's harder. She swallowed, her voice barely audible. Will you stay until the real doctor arrives? Yeah, he said softly, pulling a chair close to her bed. I'm not going anywhere. And as the storm raged outside, Evelyn Hart, the woman who never trusted anyone, closed her eyes and let herself feel safe for the first time in years, not knowing that this single night, and the single dad who refused to let her fall, would change everything for both of them. The hospital room had quieted, the storm had softened into a distant whisper, and Evelyn Hart lay against the pillows with her breathing steadying for the first time since the elevator crash, though the fear still lingered in her bones like a shadow she couldn't shake. Daniel sat beside her, elbows on his knees, eyes watching every monitor with the same intensity he once used on battlefields, as if the machines themselves might betray her if he looked away. But what startled Evelyn more was how comfortable she felt with him there. A man she'd known for less than an hour felt more trustworthy than people she had worked with for years. It frightened her almost as much as the fall. You should check on your daughter, she whispered, staring at his profile. Daniel shook his head slowly. She's asleep at my neighbor's. And you almost went into shock. I'm not leaving you alone after that. Her throat tightened at the words, not because of what he said, but because of what he didn't say. She had lived her whole life surrounded by people, yet none stayed when she actually needed someone. She studied him quietly, the soaked t-shirt, the tattoo, the exhaustion in his eyes that he hid behind calm professionalism. You look tired, she murmured. When was your last break? 2 days ago, he said with a small shrug. Single dads don't get breaks. Evelyn blinked, her voice softening without her permission. What happened to her mother? Daniel didn't answer immediately. He took a slow breath, the kind that carried the weight of memories. She died giving birth, he said finally, voice low, steady, but cracked just enough for her heart to feel it. Didn't even get to hold our daughter. I promised her I would protect the baby no matter what. And ever since, well, life's been a fight. Evelyn felt her chest tighten, not from pain, but from something dangerous and unfamiliar, empathy. The woman who built an empire by hiding her emotions suddenly felt every one of them rising. She hesitated, then reached out, placing her hand gently over his. I'm sorry, she whispered, and Daniel froze, not because it hurt, but because he couldn't remember the last time someone had said those words to him without pity or distance. You're strong, Evelyn added softly. Stronger than most. He gave a tired smile. No. I just keep going. That's different. Silence settled between them, not cold, not uncomfortable, but warm in a way that made both of them aware something was shifting. Evelyn, Daniel said after a moment, why didn't you tell anyone you were struggling? You run one of the biggest companies in the city. You've built everything from nothing. Why face this alone? She inhaled sharply, looking away. Because when you're on top, you can't afford to break. She swallowed the lump in her throat. People wait for you to fall. They want to replace you. They smile in your face while sharpening knives behind your back. Daniel leaned closer, his voice grounded and warm. People break when they're alone. But they also heal when someone stands beside them. She looked into his eyes, dark, sincere, unshaken, and for the first time she felt the Satori moment hit her, that sudden, piercing clarity that the strength she admired her whole life wasn't about being unbreakable, it was about finding someone who helped you rise when you shattered. I don't know how to do that, she whispered. Trusting anyone, it feels like handing them a weapon. Daniel's hand tightened around hers. Then let someone who won't use it against you be the first. Her breath caught. No one had ever spoken to her like that, no one had ever dared. And yet he didn't say it like a challenge, or a promise, or a demand. He said it like a truth. A simple, unshakable truth she had refused to see. Suddenly her heart raced again, not with fear, but with emotion she didn't know how to name. Before she could speak, the door swung open and her assistant burst in, drenched from the storm, frantic. Miss Hart. Thank God you're, she froze upon seeing Daniel sitting close, their hands intertwined. Evelyn's first instinct was to pull away, but she didn't. For once, she didn't hide, didn't retreat, didn't put her armor back on. Instead, she lifted her chin. Cancel tomorrow's meetings, she said calmly. All of them. The assistant's eyes widened. But the board can wait, Evelyn said, her voice firm but peaceful. I'm not dying tonight. The assistant rushed out, and Daniel raised an eyebrow. You sure about that? She smiled faintly. Yeah. I think I just decided I want to live. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't loud. It was simply the moment Evelyn Hart reclaimed herself. And Daniel saw it happen, the shift, the awakening, the rebirth, and it stirred something deep inside him too. He stood slowly, stretching his stiff shoulders. You need rest, he murmured. I'll be right outside. But her fingers didn't release his. She looked up at him, eyes no longer filled with fear, but with something brave, fragile, and real. Stay, she whispered. Just until I fall asleep. Daniel hesitated, but only for a breath. Then he sat back down, his presence settling the room like a promise. Evelyn closed her eyes, the last of the storm fading from her mind as his warmth stayed beside her, and in that quiet, both of them realized something had changed forever. Two broken people had collided in the worst moment of their lives, and somehow, they had found something worth holding on to. And as this chapter closes, if you felt even a spark from this story, hit that subscribe, drop a like, and share it. Your support keeps these stories alive, and the next chapter of Evelyn and Daniel's journey is only just beginning.